So we haven't got a full transcript of the speech yet. If anyone finds one, do send it across. But I thought we'd go through just some of the things that he's pointed out because they've got some clips. And, he said, a tide of change is sweeping the country. Sunlight is pouring over the entire world as America has a chance to seize this opportunity like never before. But first, we must be honest about the challenges we face. And then he begins just literally laying into Biden. I mean, this was just... I really enjoyed it. Again, it wasn't a unifying speech, right? What he was doing is naming the previous establishment. Biden, all of the people below him, the heads of the agencies, all of these people who were part of like the Biden... No, they're all under the bus, and everyone else is with Trump. They are yesterday's men. They're all gone. They're all out. Is basically what you're saying.
Because that is a lot broader than Biden cannot handle a simple crisis. That's the government cannot handle a simple crisis.
The entire government, everything complicit with Biden's regime, under the bus.
One thing that I got from all of that was that he's setting up a sort of casus belli for radical action.
Yeah.
That's what I sort of gathered from the tone of his speech. All of these failures, he kept it as broad as possible to justify his actions against as many people as possible, really.
Yeah. I mean... It was sort of scathing criticism. And deserved, of course.
Completely.
Yeah, not really pulling any punches.
But as you point out, it's not criticism of Biden specifically. It's criticism of the entire structure that propped Biden up. And so you are right. I think he is essentially giving himself casus belli to fire anyone he wants in these institutions. And saying no, because it failed to protect our magnificent law-abiding citizens, but provided sanctuary and protection for dangerous criminals. Yeah, I mean, what backwards, mental, demented organization was Biden running? And if Trump just flips the entire thing essentially on its head, says, no, all the criminals are getting punished, and all the citizens are being protected, then that just invalidates everything Biden did to bring social justice to America. It's just complete invalidation of everything about Biden's regime.
What I quite enjoyed watching, well, it was frustrating, but enjoyed watching over the last 4 years, is all sorts of Democrat nominees, appointees, largely for sort of the higher circuit of judges and all that sort of thing. And they're picking the most sort of insane, not literally blue head, but blue head type, crazed, globalist, feminist, Karen, weirdo freaks.
High BMI diversity kind of thing, yeah.
And that, so it's the entire edifice that sat below Biden.
Yes,
is to blame. It's obviously not really Biden, is it? He was just this doddery old...
He's just a figurehead.
Something from the crypt sitting on top of it as a figurehead.
He's a mascot, really, more than anything else.
Yeah.
And then he just started listing Biden's numerous failings, and the Biden regime's numerous failings, obviously the entire structure. But again, we have a government that's given unlimited funding to defense of foreign wars, but refuses to defend Americans' borders or its own people. I mean, that is just it's hard to find a more damning indictment. Yeah. And again, in 100 years' time, people will be like, well, how could that have been? It's like, that great question. Right, your
only real charge is to protect the American people, of
which
literally
your only job.
You've signally failed to do for 4 straight years.
But also throughout this, listen to how weighty each of these points are. When it's the other way around, when it's a Democrat president giving the speech while a former Republican is having to sit there, the Democrat gets to say things like, okay, now we're going to have hope, now we're going to have change, now we're going to have justice. It's all this Millie Mouse stuff. But this is just solid, all of it.
Health and education system, of course, needs overhaul, clearly. We have an education system that teaches our children to be ashamed of themselves, in many cases, and hate our country. Like, that is such a powerful point. Like you say, it's so direct, and it's directly condemning everything the left has been doing for the past 20 years. It's just like, no, that stops now. And the eye of Sauron is now controlled by Trump. And so when we were like, oh God, it's looking at us, they must be like, oh God, it's looking at us. It's like, that's it. It's looking at you. You blue-head teacher who's more concerned about making sure the kids get your correct pronouns. Yeah, the eye of Sauron's on you now. How do you feel about this? You better be prepared, hopefully. Again, come on, Trump, you've got to make this happen.
There are actual adults in the room now.
Yes.
I mean, we literally had the case where white boys would have to stand up in classrooms and apologise for what they are.
Yes.
And Yeah, it stops.
I was disappointed he didn't announce the implementation of whaling battalions to deal with the woke school teacher crisis.
Well,
Alas.
that's implied. I don't think you need to state explicitly. But all of this will change starting today, and it will change very quickly. I believe that, to be honest. I think this could change really, really quickly if it's just will from the top. And why would he be saying all of this if he didn't have it?
Well, you've got to think there's a lot of people in all of these organisations who are desperately uncomfortable with what's going on, but they just haven't dared speak out, where he's now just giving them air cover to, start sorting this out, and I've got your back.
Unfortunately, that's all they've got in this one.
It is often the
I
way
expected
that
more from them.
the average person who's got no direct influence on policy or government in any way, they're looking for an indication of carte blanche from the government, that it's okay to do this or say this now, right? And so the left have had that for the last 4 years.
Yeah.
It's okay to shame white boys for being born white and a boy. Okay. So now it's...
Well, Biden did that very explicitly with
the
Elon.
other way.
He stood up and said, we've got to go after this guy, talking about Elon. And that's when all the sort of legalistic bullshit started happening, and they started going after him because his rockets might be deafening a shark or something like that, all sorts of crazy stuff. Whereas Trump's just done the kind of opposite. While Carl's pulling up a longer list of this, I saw another interesting comment from our lovely subscriber, George Christmas, who said, quick fun fact, the Capitol building is older than the Palace of Westminster.
Yeah. The Palace of Westminster was built in the 18th
the
century.
rebuilt Palace of Westminster.
Yeah, not the Great Hall
There
or
has
something.
been a Palace of Westminster there for
Henry VIII.
centuries longer than the Capitol building. If you go back to the late 18th century, there was Washington DC was a marsh,
Yes.
nothing but a marsh.
But
So
the Palace of-
technically speaking, okay, but in reality, you're out by centuries. Sorry.
Sorry, I'm
Brutal
just
dishing
looking
out
for, like,
history today.
full text of the speech.
Basic Base Ape says, it might be cold in Washington, but lizards don't feel the cold. My bet is security reasons. I think lizards do have
I imagine
cold.
lizards probably do feel the cold.
They've got to be warmed
Yeah.
up by the sun, don't they?
Yeah,
Yeah,
otherwise
they-
they can't move.
They feel the cold more than mammals, don't they? In the
But-
sense that...
Let's call up David Icke.
I
shall
get
we?
the point they're
Yeah,
making,
yeah.
though. It's a funny point, anyway.
But okay, so just other amazing points from the speech was the Panama Canal stuff. Right.
Yeah.
Go for it, Bo.
I want to go off on that.
Go on.
Well, so they built that. Wasn't it largely under Teddy Roosevelt? But anyway, it was an American project, really. But it's all the Noriega story. I love the Noriega story. I want to do an epochs. We could maybe even do
I'll be up for
economics on Noriega.
Yeah,
one
it'd be
day.
fun. You get a bit of that Escobar in there and everything.
Oh, it's thrown in there, yeah. All the Nicaragua, all the Reagan. So it was under George W., but it was under George Bush Sr. in 1989, was it? Where General Noriega had basically just taken control of Panama, like illegally, really. And he was bound up in all sorts of stuff, drug cartels, illegal seizures of power. He was a bit of a scumbag, to be fair.
Yeah.
So
A bit.
But the
yeah,
canal,
well, yeah.
I think the canal had already been given up by the time we got to. H.
Yeah, that's
Senior.
right. Yeah.
It would have been. Was it his predecessor, Jimmy Carter? Was that?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
But so by the late 80s, it was not only not directly in the hands of the United States, it's now in the hands of some douchebag like Noriega.
Yeah.
Who's
Well, I mean, he's
actively-
dead now, isn't he? Or was he? in
He's dead
prison?
now, yeah.
Yeah.
They got him. So anyway, George Bush Senior invades Panama. Right, it was a walkover, obviously. It was a complete piss, militarily. Like, the Americans lost like 20 guys or something. It was over in a few days.
Sure.
Even though some of their special forces sort of bungled a couple of bits and bobs. It was still over in a day or two or whatever it was, less than a week. And I think like 200 or 500 odd Panama people was killed and 20 odd American soldiers. Anyway, it's all done. They get Noriega, they put him in prison, and that's the end of his story. But so the idea of America sending in the Marines or the SEALs or Delta or whatever and just poning Panama militarily overnight, it wasn't that long ago, right?
No.
Like 1989, I think it was.
Yeah.
So
But they didn't
they could
keep
do that
it, did
again.
they? They didn't
Sorry?
keep. They didn't keep it.
Well, no, they
So-
changed the
yes.
government. Yeah, they changed
Yeah.
Noriega out for some friendly
And then they
government.
left Panama with control.
Yeah.
So-
But with a friendly government, so they can essentially...
But my understanding of the situation today is, as Trump was talking about, American ships get charged more for going through it. But even more egregiously, the Chinese have been allowed to set up compounds either side of the canal, and they're not as such military compounds. They're supposed to be civilian, but they could very easily be converted into military compounds. And then, so basically China does control the Panama Canal. The only thing is that they're actually building another bigger one just to the north.
Right.
So if they take back the Panama Canal, I don't know how much good it does them, other than the fact that at least they have that, even if they do open a bigger one to the north.
Yeah.
Well, if they do take it back, I think the obvious thing to do is just to keep the territory for the United States. I know it would be a difficult thing, but from a strategic point of view, if you handed it over to a friendly government and within, 30 years, all of a sudden, they're charging you more than China, well, it sort of suggests that you can't go down that same diplomatic.
I mean, there's almost a lesson for the Chagos Islands in there.
There is, yeah.
I just feel like because I didn't know he was going to say anything like that. I haven't heard any
no one
sort of
did.
soundings about Panama before.
I've heard him mention Panama, but I didn't think it was particularly serious.
I mean, we just had him announce an invasion.
I feel like it's really
two
important.
different countries.
Yeah, I really don't want to get involved in any foreign wars apart from Mexico and Panama,
Yes.
which we will dominate if needs be.
Well, so the thing about this is these are totally justified and long overdue, right? The cartel war, at the very least, right? Like it speaks to Mexico's lack of power as a state. That this is the problem.
It's sort of a failed state.
Yeah, it's essentially a failed state.
Well, the
right?
cartel do control the state.
Yeah.
Was it Claudia Scheinbaum, the leader? Mm-hmm. She's basically in cartel pay, as explicitly as human.
I thought she was under other influences, but maybe I'm just misremembering.
It's all a giant car crash.
Yeah.
The Mexican government has been for a long, long time a dumpster fire.
Yeah.
But the cartels essentially control the north of the country, don't they? So it's just I've seen bizarre stories where it's like there's a town in Mexico without a mayor because no one's got the balls to try and become the mayor because the cartels just kill them. It's like, okay, well that's a problem, and essentially there's you need the Bukele solution to this. Just go in and deal with them.
That is
they're all bad. There's no don't worry about we'll settle the difference afterwards. Kill anyone who resists and arrest every single one of them.
It's like forget the police, forget the equivalent of the Home Office.
You need the
full military might to just round up everyone involved in this and put them in prison till they're either dead or very, very old men.
Yeah, and if
that's what you have to do.
And if Mexico is not capable of doing this, then sure, why not ask the United States to do it? Like, what else are you going to do? Allow the essentially narco states to exist in just south of America's border? No.
And they already do this to a very, very limited degree anyway. When things get entirely out of hand, like who's the Colombian guy who blew up airplanes and stuff in the 80s? Escobar. In the end, it was the DEA and Special Forces, essentially. The US stepped in and dealt with it on a very limited basis. I would love to see America, the United States of America, get heavily involved to clean Mexico up.
Yeah, just 100,000 troops, month-long campaign
it's
across the
terrible, like a real crying shame what's happened to Mexico.
I'll tell you what I'd love about
the
that.
number of civilians that are murdered, innocent civilians
and
that are murdered in Mexico all the time.
But you could from the American perspective, go, look, this is the drug problem that we have to deal with. Right? These are goddamn, who knows how many millions of people have died because of Mexico's drugs being pumped into the United States. We're not having any more. Like, if you need moral carte blanche to do it, well, you've got it, and it's actually an embarrassment to the United States that they didn't deal with it sooner, but it's nice to see that Trump is prepared to use hard power for a good reason on an actual problem that will make things better.
And it will be so good for America because at the moment, I mean, if you sign up for the US military, you might get sent to Ukraine to fight alongside Nazis for a coke-sniffing president against Russian lads who you really haven't got a problem with. And it's like, who wants to sign up to do that? But if it's sign up and you are going to be parachuted over the mansion of a drug cartel boss and you're going to spray him and his Sicarios down with your machine, I mean... And
liberate the good people
and
of
think
Mexico.
of the movies that we're going to get coming out with a 5-year lag. The movies that we're going to get if the US military go in is going to be epic.
Yeah. And like if you were like American forces traveling through France to liberate them from Nazi Germany, right?
Yes,
it's going to be Mexicans cheering on the street for you because you wiped out the drug cartels.
Oh,
Well,
and we're
it's-
going to get body cams as well. We're going to get body cams on
everyone
the
on both
troops.
sides.
Yeah.
and shit.
It is worth mentioning as well that these Mexican cartels, there are lots of cases where a small Mexican town doesn't play ball, they murder all their children.
Yeah.
Like, every single child is killed.
Like, these are the worst people you can possibly imagine.
Some of the most brutal things I've ever seen or heard of are what Mexican cartels do to each other and innocent people in Mexico.
So it couldn't happen to a
Unbelievable.
worse person
Like, so for
or worse
example,
people.
So for example, like this is how bad it is. Like the police just can't deal with it. Well, for a start, they're already completely infiltrated and da, da, da. But even if they weren't, even if you did find some police department somewhere that were prepared to fight, they're fighting paramilitaries, full-blown paramilitaries with sort of radio scramblers, heavy weaponry, like 50 cal machine guns, their own armoured Humvees, the whole lot, right? And so sometimes you'll get a cadre within the Mexican military, like some Navy Special Forces dudes, the equivalent of Navy SEALs or something or other. They'll have a bit of a go at like really taking out a cartel. Sometimes they win, sometimes they don't.
Yeah.
There'll be like a giant firefight with hundreds of guys aside with heavy weaponry. Like cartels have got helicopter gunships and crap.
Yeah.
Oh,
Send in the military.
even Escobar was hiring Israeli mercenaries, right, back in his day, and that was like in the very beginning of this thing. These days, they're just having whole special forces, units shipped in to fight for them. So, I mean, this is going to be a really interesting fight to watch.
And the thing is, I don't want to be too much of a sycophant, but if the Pentagon decides they're going to send in the 101st,
Yeah.
they're going to send in like all of the Navy SEALs or whatever it is. It won't be a contest actually.
No.
It won't be a contest actually. It's one thing America have done very well is special forces stuff. When they decide that it's no holds barred now and we are taking you out,
This is the whole.
they're going to get you.
Who is it? Who was the guy back in the sort of mid 2000s who was like, "Oh, we're going to topple 7 governments in 7 years or something"? He was a general, and they got this message down from the Bush administration, and he was just like, "Well, why are we doing this?" It's like, "Well, I guess we don't know what else to do. We've got a military that can topple governments, but that's about all we can do with it."
Well, I know.
And so this is basically a good application of that military. Basically.
I know after 9/11, people like Dick Cheney and Paul Wolfowitz and Richard Pell.
It
were just
wasn't
like,
those. It was they had sent the message down to this general. I can't remember which general it was.
well, that's what the military is all about.
Well, yeah,
Is they're just waiting for the green light from the politicians.
Yeah.
And now you've put it in our hands. Now it's a matter of kinetic force.
yeah. Which it
Leave it to us, teams. We've got this covered. This bit of it.
Yeah.
If you green light it, we got it covered.
Yeah.
I would love to see them do that in Mexico. I really would.
Yeah, no,
These
absolutely.
cartels are the scum of the earth.
Absolutely.
Absolute scum of the earth.
Like, for some reason, allowing them to flourish has been policy. It's like, no, Trump's going to stop that. So good. It's a great start. So that's, I mean, just so, again, it's a policy with no downsides, right?
Yeah.
You know? Who's defending the cartels? Well, I mean, lefty lawyers are like, well, what about the human rights? It's like, what about the human rights?
Yeah, they sacrificed those when they killed a whole bus full of school kids for no reason or whatever.
It's the Bukele model is a brilliant model because it's just like, okay, what was the downside? Well, the downside is all the criminals are in jail. Oh, that's great.
Right.
Yeah, and you can see how this is a much needed refresh for the American system because so many people are checked out, especially white young men are just completely checked out of this process. And if Trump goes through all of this and he's serious about this, then you could see a resurgence in military recruitment.
Oh yeah.
A whole belief in the state. I mean, this is exactly what the US system. So it is true that Trump is the guy who renews the system rather than destroys it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, nobody thought he was. Well, I mean, who thought that Trump was here to destroy it? He's very clearly here to essentially renovate the entire thing. But I think you're exactly right. Like the fact that he's like, right, DEI, woke, all that sort of stuff is just going to be pulled out by the roots and going to be merit only. Well, okay. I mean, I assume that he's going to do it. There's no reason to think that he won't do it. And well, that was the thing that was making people not buy into the system. As in, why would I want to fight for a country that is actively discriminating against me? Well, now the country's not going to be. It's going to be working in your favor. You will be able to succeed as a white man in America again, is what Trump is essentially saying with the anti-DEI stuff. So it's like, okay, yeah, why wouldn't it pay dividends?
Just for the record, a couple of people in chat saying that was General Wesley Clark you were talking about. That
That
sounds
is,
right. That
yes.
sounds right to me. I
That
think
is, it was General Wesley Clark, exactly. He seemed like a lovely chap, and like it's just like, yeah, well, there was clearly some ulterior force operating, wasn't there, Mr. Clark? But yeah, so getting rid of the DI stuff is just superb. Obviously, has to be done. I thought it was very interesting how he said, "Look, I'm going to executive order to stop government censorship," because that surely could have gone further, right? As in, that's First Amendment violations. This is violations of the Constitution. Yep. So he could have gone a lot further on that, surely. Right? Excuse me, but that got a standing ovation from, like, Vance was straight on his feet as soon as he said it. I was like, oh, okay, there's something close to Vance.
That felt like a bit of a response to all the tech bros that backed him.
It does, but also like it's a response to the fact that we know the Biden regime was directly interfacing. I mean, like Zuckerberg and Musk have just been like, yeah, we had loads of feds.
Yeah.
Well, the reason that a lot of the tech side of things have sided with Trump is that they're facing a lot of legislation and fines from Europe, and so if they can approach it under free speech grounds, well, all of America is basically backing them there, and so it's basically a license for them to expand their remit and not have all of these massive penalties, because I think the fine that was put towards, I can't remember which company it was, I think it might have been Facebook, was like 800 million euros, which is just entirely unreasonable. And if the cost of operation there is so high, well, they're going to lose a massive portion of their customers. And so it's an existential problem for their companies, and the free speech issue is a nice sort of wrapping paper and bow to tie on what is ultimately a financial decision for them.
Well, the way that Zuck explained it on Joe Rogan was that if the US government is not going to back free speech, they're left out on the cold when the EU wants to go after them. So now the US government is going to be very clearly, no, we've got your back, and then the EU has to sort of back off, or at least they're going to be much more out on a limb when they do it.
And I don't want to be the Mark Zuckerberg defender either, but like, I don't know how I would feel if because I mean, Mark Zuckerberg's not even 40. Like, he became one of the world's richest men in his 20s with a platform with 3.5 billion users. And suddenly he's got the US government, literally the president, in his ear, being like, you're going to take that down or else.
Oh, yeah, I don't give him a hard time for that.
I don't even think that's unreasonable. Because, I mean, especially as, like, it's not like the Biden administration didn't, you are probably going to be privy to a bunch of things that normal people aren't privy to as someone, like, in his position. So, okay, Biden's on the phone, he's screaming, you take that down. What are we going to do? We're just going to let it go? No, we'll just take it down. It's great.
Does anyone else find it slightly odd that Facebook's still a thing? Why did it not go the way of MySpace? It feels like it's like a boomer book. It's like
I haven't used it for 10 years.
Yeah, I haven't. Yeah.
Well,
I got rid of mine.
The boomers are still.
I use it, and I use it because it's how I keep in contact with my friends and family. Right? It's just
okay.
And a few years ago, Zuckerberg said that what he was trying to do is essentially manage it so it's like bubbles. So you've got your bubbles of friends and family, you add them to your Facebook to just literally be a social platform rather than a sort of mass interaction platform like Twitter is. And I think that's why it's successful still, because how am I going to contact my mum?
But it is boomer.
You've got a landline.
Yeah, I know, but I don't
send a letter.
I don't like doing that. It's easy. Just send her a text message, right?
I still call my parents' landline, and they're both on Facebook, and I'm not.
I'm not saying I don't do it. I'm just saying it's easier to message her on
It's
Facebook.
just when I deleted my Facebook, like nothing changed seemingly in my life.
My life got better, actually.
Well, yeah, it got noticeably better.
But the point is, I like Zuckerberg. I don't think was ever like a political agent, right? He wasn't someone who's like, right, I'm gonna insert myself into the highest echelons of international politics, so the US government will be listening to me and stuff like that. And I don't think that's what he was after. I think he was a pervy nerd who was just like, I just want to check out these chicks. And suddenly he's in the anyway. So yeah, I think that essentially this is Trump's very effective way of just also it's a condemnation of Biden as well. So how could you do this? This is very anti-American. All the tech bros suddenly flip. There's no reason not to flip to Trump at this point, right? It's like, look, you don't have to be a part of their regime. I'm going to bury their regime. You can just come over and sit next to me and be like, yeah, no, he's right. Very sad.
On the theme of burying regimes, Kevin Fox, one of our subscribers, asks, would you guys be happy paying higher prices in the short term if Trump imposed stringent tariffs on the UK to force Labour out of power? Yes.
I mean, I personally would, but I can understand why there would be people who wouldn't be happy with that.
Right. I'd be happy. I'd also be happy if they started bombing Westminster.
I've got nothing to lose. Yeah.
I don't think we should. I mean, remember, we are still living under Keir Starmer's dictatorship.
Well, yes.
So we obviously don't want Donald Trump to start bombing Westminster.
No, just a surgical insertion. Again, the 101st dropping on Whitehall. I'll take it.
Where are the Mexican cartels operating? Well, Tijuana and Westminster. What is it?
Is there going to be a
10
tip
Downing
line?
Street. How did that happen?
Yeah. I've seen some suspicious Mexican gentleman going into number 10.
Hero Starmero.
Suspicious Mexican gentleman wearing a red dress in 11 Downing Street. No. Would we be happy with him? I mean, like I said, I personally would. I would just, it'd suck, but prices are through the roof anyway. How much worse can it get?
Yeah.
And I would love to see Keir Starmer.
Well, none of us personally, I don't think, personally export anything to the United States. So
we all do.
We
We're
export
exporting
merch.
this right now.
Well, no,
but it's not a
this is a
commodity, though,
broadcast,
is it?
not
No, I suppose not.
Right,
The magazine and merch might go up.
Yeah, I guess the magazine.
Are tariffs going to get applied to Lotus
There it
Eater
is.
subscriptions?
No.
Yeah. By the way, go and get
so,
the mug and the t-shirts before the tariffs come in.
seamless transition.
Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful.
I'm a
Trump's going to
professional.
make
Thank
them
you
more
very much.
expensive. Get the T-shirt before he
So-
makes it £5 more expensive.
Exactly. Otherwise, we're going to have to pay tariffs, and that'll be awful.
Yep.
I hope you appreciated that segment from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, and if you want to see what else we're up to, you could always follow Connor's series, Tomlinson Talks, this one looking at the grooming gang scandal. And if you want to see all the other things we're putting out, you can always follow us on Twitter. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.